We're back! Fan versus fan for Game of Thrones Season 6.
Episode 1, I'm Brian Crosby.
I'm Joel Minty.
Let's do this.
I thought he was the man to lead us through the long night, but I was wrong.
Do you like games, little man?
You would spill blood in this holy place.
The gods won't mind. They spill more blood than the rest of us combined.
There's no hiding from this. We have to fight.
Stand at the head of our army where you belong. Show them what Lannisters are. What we do to our enemies.
The real war is between the living and the dead. And make no mistake, the dead are coming.
So Brian, what happened this episode?
Jon Snow, dead.
Sansa, alive.
Arya, blind.
The Mountain, not destroying things.
Tyrion, walking around.
Daenerys, blonde.
Melisandre, old.
Nude.
Tired.
Going to bed.
So Joel, what did you like?
Well, one thing that happened was that we immediately go right to Jon Snow, which is really important because everybody's been waiting to find out what happened, and he is still dead. And one of the things that I think the show did on purpose was that it really stretched that out so that while he still might be dead for the episode, his body is still in play.
Did you feel like he was lying there for a year and a half?
You mean like while everyone else just went about their day?
Yeah, like you and I lived our lives for however long we lived it, how long the show was off, and you just lied there. It just felt like he was lying there a long time.
Well, nobody was around, so by the time that like Davos hears Ghost calling and heads out to see what's the matter, it's like they've all just like left the party.
Yeah.
They've all gone home. They've gone to bed. They're like, well, it's good murder, guys.
Good assassination,
Good
everybody.
assassination. Let's just... Oh,
Did you read the second half of that assassination book? What we do after we kill the guy? I'm like, no, I think we just leave him there. And
They all just got
all
tired.
the evidence just out in the open.
Yeah, and then of course like the 5 people who are dedicated to Jon all happen to be the ones to hear and come out at once.
Yeah.
So, what did you think about the scene?
I like that we got to Jon right away. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's what we've been waiting for, and all the teasers and trailers and images have been promoting Jon, and people have been trying to figure out if he's dead or not. So I like that we got to it. I would have liked if they had done a little bit more with it. I felt like the question of is Jon dead or not was, for me, sort of presumed. I assumed that he was going to be dead. He was well stabbed.
Yes,
at the end
stabbed.
of the last season.
People in Game of Thrones have died from less.
Yeah, so him just like being dead, it's like, well, I sort of expect him to be dead. I would have liked there being a little bit extra. I don't know. If you're not that they had to bring him back to life this episode, but I don't know. I would a little teaspoon of something as to where this is going.
So one other scene that was really important off the bat to figure out was what happened to Sansa and Theon. And I think it's kind of cool that they just cut to them running through the forest. It was never really a mystery. Even though they fell from the exact same height as Miranda, they're going to live because it would just be the lamest thing ever if the episode starts and it's just some guards poking them being like, well, they're dead. And then it just cuts to King's Landing. Yep. It's not going to happen. So having them rush away and whatnot, the fight scene seemed, I don't know, a little uninspired. A lot of people kind of looking around. Yeah, with Brienne.
Okay.
I don't know, she was great.
But did you notice, like, Podrick totally did not blow it?
He didn't.
Like, he didn't suck it immediately at the most basic task?
He seemed very much kind of like, hold the sword in the way.
Yeah, the fact that he hit another guy's sword with his sword, I think he should get some points for that.
Yeah, it was a shining moment for him. But one of the things I think is really cool is the idea that going forward, you're going to have a quartet that consists of Brienne, Theon, Sansa, and Podrick.
Yeah.
Which has not existed before, and I think it's really cool. And Sansa now has kind of like actual protection, someone who's actually going to treat her well. So that is something that hasn't happened since like the second episode when Lady died. So that's pretty impressive.
I think it's a pretty interesting collection of characters, that they're all so different and they all so desperately require each other.
Well, it makes you wonder what's going to happen to Theon because theoretically his saving moment is he's looking after Sansa now, and then he immediately hands her off to someone who's far more qualified than
right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing him continue to struggle. Like, it looks like he's becoming a good guy, but how stable is this guy?
Well, he held a sword again, right? So it's kind of like, oh, I have power that I never had before.
Right.
Or at least haven't in years.
Like, we just don't know what his triggers are.
No.
You know, like they might walk into some restaurant and some guy asks him if he wants ale, and somehow that's the worst thing you could offer him because he was drowned in it for, I don't know, like 3 months. Like, literally,
Yeah.
like, who knows? You don't know what his triggers are.
They never showed it on camera, but they have tortured him with every form of food imaginable. So whenever he has lunch or dinner, he's just like, no, why? Leave me alone.
Someone's trying to get him to eat his Brussels sprouts, but in his mind, they're eating him.
Yeah, well, especially sausage.
Yeah, of course.
So, Brian, what's something you liked?
I thought the show was strangely funny. I'm not even sure it's a pro. I'm going to call it a pro because I had a good time. But it was strangely funny. I thought the Davos moments were really fun when Thorne is trying to get in and he's having this really reasonable negotiation. Like the other guys are trying to kill him. He's like, well, we'll come out shortly. We're just not ready yet, sir.
Yep.
Totally understated moment. And the Dothraki
scene
is really funny.
They're ridiculous. You're not expecting these brand new Dothraki characters to suddenly be like throwing jokes at you in a language that you don't understand.
They were total bros about it. They were so casual. Like, the first moment was Dothraki-ish and poetic. Or he's saying, like, there was nothing more beautiful than seeing a naked woman for the first time. And some guy in the background was like, well, what about enslaving a man?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, sure, yeah, enslaving it. Number one, enslaving a man. Number two, seeing a woman. It's like, well, what about destroying a civilization? It's like, okay, number one, destroying a civilization. Number two, enslaving a man. Number three, seeing a naked. Well, what are just kept on going.
You feel like if it had kept going forever, eventually there'd be a guy who's like, I like fishing. They'd be like, shut up, Stu. Like,
I wanted it to like cut to nighttime, and they're still there, and then like the whole horde is gathering. I was like, well, what about putting on a warm pair of socks? Yeah. Number 300, and he's still
the cow's got this big list, and Khaleesi's asleep, like just at his feet. He's like, I was supposed to take her tonight, but
she's. You see her in the darkness, like wandering off, and they're like, all right, number one is this. Yeah. Nope. They all have to agree on what the best thing is.
She whistles, and Drogon flies in and just swoops her in the middle.
Yeah, moves everyone down. Anyway, that was really weirdly funny. Like, you don't normally get that. I think in the show, but especially from the Dothraki.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially from the Dothraki.
But I guess they're a different kind of Dothraki. Like, these are the field Dothraki, the grass Dothraki people, not the desert Dothrakis. They've got a more...
better sense of humor.
Yeah, a more optimistic look on life, I guess. So that's what we liked about the episode. Joel, let's talk about some of our cons.
So, Brian, what are some of the cons from this episode?
This is a minor con. Not a big con. The show has a lot of nudity in it, in general, not this particular episode. And I don't mind it. I enjoy it. All the people can be naked if they want. I would probably still watch it. But in this episode, there was no nudity until we got to the last scene. And then, arguably, I'm sure we all have our favorites, the most attractive woman on the show got naked. Mm-hmm. And she does get naked. It's not like she hasn't been naked before. But to me, it felt like check nudity in this one.
Right.
Like we snuck it under the wire.
You thought it wasn't going to happen, but
we did it just for you guys. We know this is why you watch the show.
Right.
And no, I don't want to take away from the writing, perhaps, of that scene. Like, I understand why that's there as a visual. Like, to see her transform into an old woman, you get to see her entire body. Yeah. That's such a contrast from how you normally see her. So I get that. I appreciate the thought of that contrast. But I can't help but feel like they're still trying to, sneak it under the wire.
You could argue, though, too, that it's almost like a punch in the gut, right? It's like, oh, you want your nudity? You want your nudity? Huh? Old lady! She's like a troll old lady, too. She's going to slowly walk into the bed, right?
Yeah.
So, I think there's almost, you could imagine it as a tongue-in-cheek thing poking at people, too, right? Where it's like, oh, I think you're getting titillation? Not today.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Because, come on, a lot of erections just got stifled.
Permanently.
Yeah, probably.
Joel Minty, what did you not like about this episode?
The same thing that I didn't like about almost every episode in Season 5, which is everything to do with the Sand Snakes and Dorne. It's still around. I audibly groaned when the opening credits went to Dorne again. I was like, I thought that part was over. Nobody cools there anymore. Right? But people are still alive, and I guess now not so many are. The main thing... the scene with Prince Doran was cool. That's fine. The guy who played Ariahota died. He was in 3 episodes and
is
said
his name
2
Prince
lines.
Doran?
Prince Doran.
Really?
Of Dorne, yeah.
Okay.
Doran of Dorne.
It's really uncreative.
Yeah.
The family, the people of Dorne.
Yeah. Well, this is like his first name, yeah. I guess maybe he's like named after the place where he's from, right?
It's like George Foreman's family. Like everyone's got a slight variation on the name of where they come from.
One of the things that was really frustrating for me is every time that you see the Sand Snakes, they somehow come off as irritating and like just lame. Like you feel like they're trying to hype them up to be tough,
Yeah.
and as soon as they actually meet someone of any caliber, they're just going to get like chopped in half. And the worst scene of the whole episode is easily the one with Tristane.
Yeah.
When they're in this little tiny cabin and they come in and they're like, "We're not here to feed you. We are here to kill you." And they separate, and he's like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll draw my sword and attack. Oh, do I want to attack Spear Girl or Whip Girl?" And like the person with the whip was like,
It's not a close quarters weapon.
no, it's not a close quarters weapon. There's like, it's like 5 feet of whip. And when you
Yeah.
saw her fight with it in the other episodes, she's like whirling it around and she has to get it like wound up. And she's standing there coiled with it like she's going to catch his sword in it.
Right.
Or it's like, you know, Wonder Woman's lasso and it's not going to get all like smashed up by his like dinky iron. And like he could easily have just stabbed at her. What would she have done? Like caught it, whipped it, like some sort of super fast ping pong type reaction to like snap it out of his hand. She just gets stabbed.
I wonder if they thought about all of that. Like they're about to walk into his room and is like, I got this whip. You got an 8-foot pike.
You go behind.
How are we gonna? What if we just fuck with him and then you'll stab him? That's great.
Yeah,
That's great. That's how we'll
exactly.
do this.
That was probably it. She probably had nothing. She was probably really sweating. She was like, "Holy shit!
How am I gonna do
Holy
this?
shit, sis! Like, get him! He's
Yeah.
looking at me."
Yeah.
Right. But anyway,
I agree with them as characters. They're fairly one-dimensional. They could be cool. There's a lot of bravado for I'm not even sure what. They come across as total fanatics
Yeah.
with little logic.
And
I wish they were awesome.
they're not half as cool as their mother, who
No.
has poison kisses and
No.
like, you know, now she's like murdered like a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
After like the first season where she's introduced, all she did was sleep with people, and now she's just killing people. So
Yeah.
she's Dornish through and through.
The other thing that I thought was weird was the marine scene. It was good to get back there,
Yes.
see what's going on, how that triumvirate is ruling.
Everything with Varys makes me happy.
Yeah, he's very cool. And then we get there, and we have this very strange, vacant city scene. I didn't really understand. Maybe you could explain to me. I didn't really understand where people were. I didn't understand why the city was so crappy. I didn't understand why they seemed so safe walking through it.
That's the main part. I mean, I think it's really beautiful, the shots that they had of the vacant city.
sure.
It looked super cool. But here it was like the last we knew of this city, you had the most like fail-safe, secure place probably in the whole thing, like this Colosseum, and they like the Sons of the Harpies overrun it and surprise everyone with the careful orchestration of like some mastermind supergroup of terrorists, and they end up like fighting them off desperately, and Dany flies away in a dragon, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. And then the next shot is kind of like, yeah, we feel completely safe just walking. Like the first sentence he says is, "You're walking like a rich man." It's like,
Yeah, like you own these cobblestones.
yeah, like you own the cobblestones. You would imagine that some son of the Harpy's going to be hiding in like a barrel, and just go like, "Whoa!"
Well, they have that shot of a guy. It's like behind the dude. It's like he's behind a screen or something, and you can see them in the distance. And the whole shot, the emptiness of the shot, makes you feel like something's going to happen. And then we get
something
the
did
boats.
happen.
Like,
a guy talking on a soapbox.
It wasn't happening there, and it wasn't happening because of the situation that we were being shown.
No.
It was weird.
It was a weird counterbalance. At the same time, I was kind of glad to not see them attacked because you're like, gosh,
What are they gonna do?
that happens just friggin' every day in Marine. Like just for once, like have breakfast. Do
Yeah.
anything but try to murder people for a second, Sons of Harpy.
And those guys aren't going to survive anything.
So this is the first episode of season 6. It really hops around and tries to cover as many characters as it can. It only repeats once with Davos.
Yep.
And as much as it can be frustrating when you're watching the show and you're used to a show that has lots of big moments, lots of twists and turns, people dying left and right and whatnot, the first episodes are always kind of dry this way. They're always just meant to remind everyone where everyone is because otherwise it's so hard to keep up with.
Yeah, I agree. I felt that way about previous seasons, and I felt this way about this episode as well. That you wait so long to get more episodes, and the first one comes in, and it spends the whole time like setting up for the next one that you get to see. So I'm gonna watch the next one and hope that it's the one that I want. But I'm happy to tune in to get the info that I need. As you said, I'm looking forward to that Sansa Brienne sort of team up, I think is going to be cool. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to more stuff in Marine of that sort of triumvirate running it and seeing how Tyrion works out. I wish it was a little bit spicier, and I wish they'd done a little something with the end more than what they had. But
that was a cool
it's okay.
moment, though. That was she takes off the necklace and she becomes like she's this wicked old hag. Like it gives you a little bit of insight into one of the aspects of Game of Thrones, which is actually downplayed as far as fantasy goes, which is the magic. And it's like in this case, you really do recognize it's like she is possibly not immortal, and that I thought was pretty cool. It's not quite as good as the ending of Two Swords, where the Hound and Arya beat the snot out of a whole bunch of Lannister men in a tavern, which was probably the best ending to a first episode.
So where do you think that's going to go? Do you think it's going to be some situation where this old woman, who we assume is actually an old woman, some sort of ancient person, gives her life to Jon?
I was
bring
thinking
him
something like that. Now that I've seen that, I don't feel like Melisandre is going to do a tip. She could have just popped in and Beric Dondarrion'd him and like brought him back. It seems. I mean, Thoros Samur said that she had done it about 5 to 7 times.
Right.
So why she would hold back? I mean, she doesn't necessarily care about him. I mean,
I don't know why she would.
She's got a couple failed visions now, so she might be having a crisis of conscience. I could see her doing something crazy like pouring her life soul or giving all her hotness to Jon or something like that.
He's pretty hot. How much hotter can he get?
Well, I could grow her boobs.
Jon with boobs?
And red hair.
I'd watch that.
So this is Fan vs. Fan for Season 6 of Game of Thrones. This is Brian. I'm Joel. We're going to be your hosts for it every Monday night for the next 2 months and a half of a month. And if you like what you heard, if you thought we had hilariously great opinions, then you can check us out and subscribe right here with Dorkshelf.
Or you can follow us on Twitter at Dorkshelf.
There's all sorts of ways to connect with Dorkshelf, Fan vs. Fan, and Brian and I for all your Game of Thrones laughs and jokes and gags and fun times and murders.
See you next week!
Kicked him out!